All right, so let's dive into these iPhone 16 Pro reviews you sent over. We've got that Mac Rumors deep dive, and then the quick YouTube overview, so should give us plenty to unpack today. You're all about efficiency, right? Smart use of tech. So the question is, are these upgrades just like incremental bumps, or is there something bigger here?
I think that's the question with every new iPhone, right?
Yeah.
Like trying to cut through the hype and see if the changes actually matter for how we work and, live our lives.
Exactly. And one thing that jumped out at me in the Mac Rumors article was how the line between the regular iPhone 16 and the Pro models is getting kind of blurry. Like features that used to be Pro exclusives, like that action button and the cool dynamic island thing, those are standard now.
Yep.
Makes you wonder, is Apple changing up their game plan?
Yeah, it's definitely a trend we've been seeing. Bringing those popular features to the standard models, it could be Apple's way of boosting sales for those. But I mean, for people who really want to push their iPhone to the limit.
Mac Rumor still points to the promotion display, those upgraded cameras with the 5x telephoto lens, and the better ultra-wide lens as the things that really set them apart. Those seem like they'd be right up your alley, especially if you're really into photography or just spend a ton of time on your phone.
Oh yeah, the promotion display alone makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
For visual clarity and how responsive the phone feels, especially if you're sensitive to screen refresh rates and all that. And for anyone who appreciates good image quality, those lens upgrades on the Pro, those are going to be hard to resist for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about this new camera control button. McRumors called it a love it or hate it kind of thing, and I'm curious what you think. Faster access to the camera sounds good on paper, but will it actually make things faster or just be another thing to fumble around with one-handed?
Well, I can tell you my experience. At first, I was a little unsure. Muscle memory is a real thing, and switching from tapping the screen to using a button for the camera felt weird. But honestly, once I got used to it, the speed difference is noticeable. For someone like you who's all about efficiency, that extra fraction of a second could make a difference when you're trying to get that perfect shot.
Interesting. So it's like pushing through that initial hump to get to the good stuff later. Speaking of the camera, did you see any big leaps forward in the actual camera tech this year?
Well, it seems like instead of totally reinventing the wheel, Apple is focusing more on giving users more control over their pictures after they take them. The camera hardware itself has some small improvements, but the real story is in the software and the post-processing stuff.
Yeah, Mac Rumors mentioned those little but important camera improvements like better macro mode, more customization for photographic styles, even 4K video at 120 frames per second with adjustable frame rates. Plus, that new audio mix feature for videos sounds amazing for people who create content. It's like having a tiny editing studio right on your phone.
Exactly. It all points to this larger trend of giving users more power and options to customize things the way they want. It's like Apple gets at it. People don't just want to take pictures or videos anymore. They want to actually shape those moments and share them in their own unique way.
And speaking of power, we got to talk about the elephant in the room, or I guess the chip in the phone, the A18 Pro. That YouTube video made it sound like they launched a rocket into my pocket or something.
Chuckles.
Yeah.
The 18 Pro is definitely a beast, that's for sure. Though, like McRumor said, people who already have a fairly recent iPhone might not see a huge difference in speed for their everyday stuff. At least not right away.
And that's where things get interesting for me. If the A18 Pro is way more powerful than what we're doing on iPhones right now, what's Apple really doing? Are they like future-proofing these devices for something bigger down the line, something smarter?
Now you're thinking like a true tech detective. And this is where it gets really exciting. The A18 Pro, especially its neural engine, suggests that Apple is getting ready for some seriously powerful AI features in the future, and I think that's going to be a game changer.
Wait, are we talking about the same kind of AI that's behind things like ChatGPT? Because if we are, that changes everything. And knowing Apple, they'd want to do it in a way that keeps people's information private, which is a huge deal right now.
You're spot on. Putting that level of AI power into something as personal as our phones has huge implications, and we should definitely unpack that more carefully. But before we go down that rabbit hole...
Okay, hold on. Let's talk battery life. Because what's the point of all this power and AI stuff if your phone's dead by lunchtime, right?
Chuckles.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. McRumors did say that battery life is better across the whole iPhone 16 lineup, but the Pro Max really stood out. I'd bet that's a combination of things: a bigger battery, better power management from the A18 Pro chip, and maybe even some new battery tech we don't know about yet.
Makes sense. Sounds like they're really going for that all day and then some battery life with the Pro Max. But putting all the impressive specs aside for a second, I was really interested in something else you mentioned earlier, those hidden gem software features. Those little tweaks that Apple slips in that can actually change how we use our iPhones in a big way.
It's often those thoughtful software touches that make the biggest difference in our day-to-day. And from what I've seen, the iPhone 16 Pro has a bunch of those little gems just waiting to be found.
All right, so let's uncover some of these treasures.
Yeah.
What has you particularly excited? Okay, so we were just getting to the good stuff, those hidden gem software features. What stood out to you? I'm always looking for anything that makes my digital life a little bit smoother,
Eh,
or just more fun.
Well, since you mentioned fun, let's talk about Safari for a second. They've got this new feature that lets you hide distracting items
Yeah.
on websites. And I know you're someone who reads a ton online, so I feel like that could be huge for staying focused.
Wait, are you serious? It's like they read my mind. My brain is constantly begging for a way to block out all the visual noise on the internet. No more getting sucked into those clickbait headlines when I'm trying to read something. Seriously. That's the kind of small but impactful improvement that I love.
It really shows that Apple is thinking about digital well-being. Instead of just overwhelming us with notifications and distractions, they're actually giving us tools to make our online world a little bit calmer and more focused.
Right. It's like they're saying, hey, we gave you all this power and connectivity. Now here's how to use it in a way that's actually good for you.
I love that.
Okay, what other hidden gems are we uncovering today before we circle back to that AI cliffhanger, of course?
Ah, yes, the AI. That's more like I don't know, like a big question mark out on the horizon, not a hidden gem exactly. But, speaking of connections, there's this cool feature that really bridges the gap between our devices. iPhone mirroring on the Mac. So imagine this, you're laser focused on something on your Mac and then bam, notification pops up on your iPhone.
Oh, I know that feeling. Do I stop what I'm doing and check it or just risk missing something important?
It's the worst, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. But now with iPhone mirroring, you can actually just use your mouse to interact with your iPhone right there
Yeah.
from your Mac. Respond to a text, check that notification, all without having to break your flow on whatever you're working on.
That sounds incredibly useful, especially for someone like me who's constantly jumping between devices. This could be a game changer for staying productive. It's like what you were saying earlier about Apple creating a more seamless experience across all their devices.
Exactly. They're thinking about how we actually use our devices in the real world
Yeah.
and trying to eliminate those little points of friction. But I think we should get back to that elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Apple Intelligence. We were just starting to dig into what it might look like to have a truly AI-powered iPhone experience.
Yeah, you're right. It's like Apple gave us this tiny taste of a superpowered future with the A18 Pro whispered AI and then just went silent. So, what do you think? Are we on the verge of something huge here, or is this just really clever marketing?
It's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone has a crystal ball that can tell us for sure, but we can look at what we know. And that starts with the A18 Pro chip itself. It can do so much more than what we're asking of it with today's apps and features. It's almost like they're over-preparing for how we're currently using iPhones.
Yeah, that's a good point. And those rumors about Siri getting a major upgrade with iOS 18.1, making it more proactive and contextually aware and able to handle more complex things. Those kinds of improvements don't just happen overnight.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Apple has been putting the work behind the scenes with AI and machine learning for years. This A18 Pro chip, it's just the beginning. It's like the
Right.
foundation they can build all these advanced AI-powered features on.
You know what else I find really interesting? Apple's focus on user privacy. They really emphasize that, and it makes me think they're doing AI differently. Not just hoovering up all our data and letting algorithms run wild, but building AI that respects our privacy and actually works on our devices, not just in some giant data center.
That's a huge point, especially for you,
Mhm.
someone who cares about how technology is used,
Yeah.
responsibly and thoughtfully.
Mhm.
If Apple can figure out how to walk that line between powerful AI and keeping people's information safe, it could change the entire game for the industry.
Okay, I'm seeing the bigger picture now, but I need to know more. What does this AI-powered future actually look like, practically speaking? Give me the details.
Okay, so picture this. Your iPhone can already translate languages, but now imagine it can understand what you're saying on a deeper level. Picking up on the nuances and anticipating what you need before you even ask. Imagine taking a photo or a video, and your iPhone can analyze it in incredible detail. You could find that one specific picture from your trip to Greece years ago, or even get suggestions for how to edit your videos like a pro.
Oh, okay, now you're speaking my language. I love to travel and do photography, so those are features I'd use all the time. But I also think about my work, staying productive. Can AI really make a difference there, or are we talking about flashy gimmicks?
And that's where things get really interesting for someone like you who values efficiency. Imagine an AI assistant that can read long documents for you and pull out the key information. Think about how much time that would save. Or picture this. Your iPhone could take your handwritten notes and turn them into a presentation, or even automate those repetitive tasks you do every day.
Now that's what I'm talking about. But let's be real for a second. We've all been burned by tech hype before, right?
No,
Things that sounded amazing but didn't quite live up to it. So how do we know this time is different?
I hear you. It's good to be cautious. But there are a few things that make Apple's AI different, I think. They have a history of taking something that already exists and then making it better, making it easier to use, and fitting it seamlessly into their ecosystem. They're not always the first ones to do something, but when they do it, they often set a new standard.
That's true. Apple plays the long game and they usually get it right eventually.
Exactly. And don't forget, they have a ton of data about how people use their devices, but they're also really committed to privacy. If they can use that data responsibly to teach their AI, the possibilities are pretty amazing.
Okay, you've convinced me. I'm choosing to be optimistic about this one. But let's come back down to earth for a second and talk about something a little more concrete. Those hidden gem software features we started with. Right back to those hidden software gems. We were talking about how Safari can now hide distracting things on websites. For someone like me who's all about focus and getting things done, that feels like a game changer. It's like a breath of fresh air in this crazy online world.
It seems like a small change, but it can make a big difference. Think about how much energy we waste just trying to ignore all the extra stuff on websites. This feature basically does that for you. It's like noise canceling for your browser.
Yes, exactly. And speaking of staying in the zone, we have to talk about that iPhone mirroring on the Mac. That sounds super useful.
It really is seamless integration at its best. Those little interruptions like a text message or a notification, those can really mess with your concentration.
Ugh, tell me about it. It's like my brain has to totally switch gears every time I glance at my phone, even for a second.
And that's exactly what Apple is addressing with this feature. They get that we're not just using one device anymore. We're constantly going back and forth. So iPhone mirroring is all about making that transition smoother and less jarring.
And less context switching means more brain power for what I'm actually trying to do, so I'm all for it.
For sure. And while we're talking about customization and having things our way, we can't forget about the revamped and control panel.
Oh, yeah, the control panel. Finally, we can make it work for us instead of the other way around.
Exactly. It's your iPhone, your workflow, your preferences. You can add shortcuts to the apps you use most, rearrange the icons, or even make them bigger or smaller for accessibility. Apple is giving the control back to the user.
I love that. Who hasn't wished they could just tweak the control panel to make it a little bit better? It's the little things, right?
Absolutely. And those little things often tell us a lot about how people are actually using their devices.
Hmm.
Apple isn't just guessing here. They're making these changes based on real user behavior.
It's the difference between technology that feels like it's in your way versus technology that feels like it's working with you.
Yes. And with these new features, the customizable control panel, the distraction blocking in Safari, that seamless iPhone, mirroring it, it seems like Apple is moving towards a future where technology fades into the background. It's less in your face and more about empowering you to focus on what matters.
I like that. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the iPhone 16 Pro, what's the final takeaway for our listeners? A lot of them are probably wondering if it's worth the upgrade.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And like most things in tech, I think the answer is it depends. It comes down to a few things. Does the fact that the Pro and standard models are more similar now make a difference to you? Are those camera upgrades, especially those new lenses, worth it for the kind of photography you do? And maybe most importantly, does the idea of a more AI-powered iPhone with all its possibilities and potential unknowns excite you enough to take the leap?
Those are definitely the right questions to be asking. It's not just about the specs on paper. It's about thinking about how these features, both big and small, fit into your life, your work, and your values. How can technology make your life better?
Exactly. The iPhone 16 Pro is a powerful tool, no doubt, but its true power is in how you choose to use it.
Well said. And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the iPhone 16 Pro. We covered a lot of ground today, from those nitty-gritty specs to the exciting potential of Apple Intelligence.
And we did it all with one goal in mind, giving you, our listeners, the information you need to decide if this upgrade is right for you.
Until next time, everyone, stay curious, stay informed, and happy tech exploring.